What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Social Standard Podcast. My guest today is an exciting one. We have Guy Kawasaki. He is the godfather of evangelism in the business world, and
What?
that's who you are. That's the coin. I think we should roll with it. But you are. You brought evangelism to the business world in an incredibly impactful way. So we should own that terminology through and through. And
Wow.
he's also good. He's also got.
Well, there was a 2,000-year gap between Jesus and me, is how I
Well, you
explain.
know what? Somebody had to fill those shoes, so I'm glad that it was you. But in all seriousness, you've been very impactful in that space, and you're the one that really coined the term and brought it to the market. And I have seen in my research through B2B influencers and watching what people are doing, a lot of people are taking cues from your playbook and what you did at your time at Apple and what you're doing at Canva. So yeah, you're definitely the godfather of evangelism in the business world. We will put in the business world as that defining feature so that we're not competing with Jesus, because that's not something we want to do. But
Yeah. I also don't want people confusing evangelism with evangelicalism. Those two things are different.
Exactly. Yes, they're very different. They're very different. And I think that sort of leads me actually straight into my first question, which is, if we're going to talk about the impact of evangelism on the B2B world and the marketing world in a digital era instead of an analog era, the most important thing for us to all understand is, what's the Guy Kawasaki approved definition of evangelism?
Okay. The Guy Kawasaki approved definition of evangelism goes back to its Greek roots. And it comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So what an evangelist does is bring the good news. And in my case, well, first there was Jesus. So he brought the good news of
Correct.
eternal life.
Yes.
And then fast forward to 1983, I was actually Apple's second software evangelist. And our job was to bring the good news of Macintosh. And at that time, we had one sort of principal target for the evangelism, which is hardware and software developers. So our job was to bring the good news of what Macintosh represents to hardware and software developers so that they would create Macintosh compatible products. And then evangelism for Macintosh kind of spread out, and it was like not just developers, but anybody. And so the good news of Macintosh was that it would increase people's creativity and productivity. For developers specifically, it enabled them to tap a market that would never have used personal computers before. It was also a great technical platform. It enabled you to create software that you never could before. So it's a very rich environment. So that was the good news of Macintosh.
Okay. And how did, that this first sort of round at Apple as a software evangelist happened in the 80s, right? So I think it's important to distinguish, because this is pre-internet. This is pre a whole bunch of things that we take for granted today. And it's honestly, it was not a guarantee that Apple was going to succeed at that particular time. So
No,
having,
it wasn't.
right? It definitely wasn't. And so having someone like you in that role was essential. But my question is, did you pitch that role to Apple? Was this something that Steve Jobs said we need an evangelist for? Or did they just have this problem and they needed a solution and you said, here's what I think we can do and here's what I think we should call it?
No, you're giving me too much credit. So when I joined Apple, the term software evangelist already existed inside of Apple.
Okay.
It came from a guy named Mike Murray, who was director of marketing. Really, it came even earlier. And Steve and one of the early employees had come up with this concept that for Apple, it's not just a matter of what's called speeds and feeds and, gigahertzes and megahertzes and gigabytes and megabytes. It's a belief in the dream that anyone can be more creative and productive. And so rather than needing traditional sales, we needed people who would bring the good news and make people believe in Macintosh as much as we did.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at that stage, you needed the software developers to make software because they had created a computer but had really no software. right? So you had the machine,
Exactly.
but you didn't have
I mean,
anything to do with the machine.
it would be like you bought a TV, but there's no channels to watch.
Right. Yes, that's a great analogy. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's a wild world, and I think one of the things that I had read in the Macintosh Way, one of your earlier books, was you know you guys really had a hard pitch in there. It was you and a couple of other folks that would go out to all these software companies and try to get them to do this. And by the way, you weren't going to pay them a development fee. There was no co-marketing. There was nothing to buy into except the dream and the possibility of making a lot of money in the future. And I think one of my favorite lessons from that was it wasn't the big software development companies that you thought would save Apple that did it. It was the smaller ones that believed in and leaned in.
Yes.
And I think that's such a powerful message for marketers today in the digital world, because sure, you want to go out and work with, what we do is influencer marketing. You maybe want to go out and work with the biggest. And maybe it's if you think, if I could just get, Justin Bieber to promote my product, everything would be great. And it's like, no, that's probably not the case. It might help. But if you have real evangelists, real customers who are influential, who are going to go out and spread the good news, they're going to be the
Yes.
best option for you, right?
You have a very good understanding of evangelism. You
I'm
may
glad.
be the third coming of evangelism.
I hope I am. I've studied it a lot. The good news for me is that you have put out a lot of great information about evangelism, and so it makes my job a little bit easier. You've done the hard work.
That's good.
I just need to
Well,
learn the lessons.
well, you know, I've never heard Justin Bieber used in quite that context,
Sure.
but what you are addressing is this marketing concept of the so-called reference account, right? So
Mm,
this traditional way of thinking is, well, I need this reference account to build credibility, to create critical mass, and all the pieces will fall into place. So if you're B2B, you want the reference account of Apple uses our chip, or
right.
Microsoft uses our product, or Mercedes uses our technology. And don't get me wrong, if Apple or Mercedes or Boeing or any big Fortune 500 company embraces your product, you know always take the money. But but I would say that the more innovative your product or service, the less likely a large organization is going to embrace it.
Mm,
And so this goes to the next theory of evangelism, which is stolen from Chairman Mao, which is let 100 flowers blossom. So
yes.
it means that, yes, you want the big reference account. You want to call your parents up and say, Dad, Mom, I landed IBM today. Don't get me wrong, that's a good thing. But it's much more likely that smaller companies and organizations will understand your good news before a large company does. And so you're almost hedging your bet. If I had a choice between working for small risk loving, or relatively more risk loving private companies that don't have to worry about 90-day finances, I would prefer small companies.
Mm-hmm.
They're much more likely to get it, and they're much more likely to adopt it, and there's much more likely to spread it. And if you pull that off, then someday you will land the reference accounts. Of course, by then it may not matter that you get the reference account
Right.
if you've reached ubiquity.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I do think that I would guess that people with higher appetites for risk they see the problems, they see the solutions, and they then would have a higher appetite to test new innovative software solutions, services, whatever it is that your business is offering. So
Yeah, I think, there's two ways you get this appetite going. Is one way is that they are more open to embracing risk of a new product or service. Another way of looking at it is they may be desperate for your product or service, right?
true.
And God bless them. I mean, you should not argue with success.
Right.
So for us, to bring it back into the Macintosh story, back then, when you're evangelizing a new platform, of course, you want Lotus, Microsoft, Ashton Tate, WordPerfect.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably too young to recognize three of those four names.
I know WordPerfect for sure. And Lotus. Yes, I know both.
Okay. So those were the reference accounts. You want to be able to say, yeah, Lotus is developing a Macintosh product. Well, the truth is Lotus developed a piece of crap Macintosh product. And so did Ashton Tate. And so what were the companies and products that made Apple successful? And I would make the case probably the most important product in Macintosh history was Aldus PageMaker.
Mm-hmm.
And Aldus PageMaker enabled you, guess what? To make pages. So you make pages for books and magazines and newspapers, small company out of Seattle. And at the time, they were just starting. It wasn't like they were, a $1 billion company in 1984. And so they arguably saved Apple. If it wasn't for PageMaker, Apple might not be around today.
Ah, what a sad world that would be too, right? What would we do without our iPhones?
Amen. Yeah. Amen, sister.
I love it. I think, yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And, obviously you're very successful at that because Apple is here. And, you also got a second stint with Apple when you came back as their Chief Evangelist officer later on in the 90s. And I think you were there to revamp this Macintosh community. So tell me a little bit about your revamp strategy and how this time was different. First time software evangelist, second time Chief Evangelist. So how do those roles differ?
Title inflation. So the second time I came back, the second time I worked at Apple, first time I came back, I was Chief Evangelist. And in those days, this is the 1995 timeframe, Apple was supposed to die.
Right.
And, it was going to be a Windows world. And Michael Dell was saying that Apple has all this cash. They should give the cash back to the shareholders and close the company because there's no hope. Dell and Compaq are going to rule the world.
We gotta love a good troll.
Yeah. So my job was to preserve the Macintosh community, not just developers, but really any believers. So it was my job to counteract this fear and paranoia and depression. I earned my money back then.
I bet you did. I bet you it was. I mean, how did you do that? Like, you think about how to change perception in a market and gain confidence and trust at scale is that's not an easy task for an entire marketing department, let alone, one person. So
back up a second. I'm not taking credit for Apple's survival. Okay, I was just a little cog in the machine.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of a real tangible thing that I did. Back then, there were these things called list servers. And list server is basically, it's kind of like MailChimp is today, right? So there, tens of thousands of people would subscribe to this email list, option in order to get email newsletters. And so we created Evangelist, as in LIST, list server. I thought I was very clever coming up with that name. Anyway, so back then, if you followed Apple, every news story was negative. Mm-hmm. Seriously, every news story about Apple began with the beleaguered Cupertino, California company, Apple. Everything was beleaguered, downtrodden, depressed, loser. It was all negativity. And so what Evangelist did is it flipped it and it said, Evangelist is only going to be good news. It's going to be about new products from developers, new products from Apple, new customers, achievements, new features, everything. It was just daily good news, good news, good news, good news. to counteract all the bad news. And
I
so
love
what I
that.
was trying to do is I was trying to help evangelists inside of companies who are carrying the Macintosh flame to have some ammunition.
Hmm.
It's not all bad news. For example, such and such happened.
Right.
And that really helped keep the community alive.
That makes sense. And this was done mainly via a newsletter.
Yes, it was an email newsletter. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, taking control of the narrative and, stalking your troops, right? That's a good strategy. And we actually, we see that a lot now, even in social media, where a company will get into a little bit of hot water and they will take to social media to address it straight to the customers. They bypass, press or anything like that, and they want to have an authentic, true connection to their customers. And social media is one of the ways that businesses are owning their narrative and owning the story. And I think
Absolutely.
it's a same
Of
concept, just a different method of going about it. So
Well, yeah, I mean, you opened up this discussion with, that was back then, what's
sure.
now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I tell you,
Yes.
back then, I mean, just to give people an idea, back then, there wasn't mobile phones yet.
Right.
I mean, you were the big dog on the porch if you had a car phone, and your car phone involved an antenna on your roof with a cable to your trunk that had this 10-pound car phone, and the receiver was screwed into someplace on your dashboard. And like hardly anybody had them. I mean, the
Right.
state of the art back then, believe it or not, was a fax machine.
Yeah.
This is even before email, okay? So, I mean, evangelism was truly an analog thing. It was hand-to-hand combat. Pack your bag, get on the airplane, and fly.
Yeah.
None of
Yeah.
this Zoom, Microsoft meetings and Teams and, all that stuff. This was hand-to-hand combat. Now, fast forward till today. I don't even have a fax machine anymore, but it's
Right.
it's all about like MailChimp, and it's community groups, and it's LinkedIn has community groups, Facebook has community groups. There's Substack. I mean, there's Medium. There's like 16 ways to do this. Now,
There are.
the good news is it's so much easier to reach people. The bad news is everybody's trying to reach people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, it's not like we went from impossible to easy. We went from impossible to hard.
Yes, that's probably true. I mean, the barriers to entry are certainly lower, but that means that everyone is doing it, right? And I think,
Yeah.
Even along those lines of decreasing barriers to entry, I mean, I think that's one of the brilliant things that Canva does when it comes to design, right? Which is where you are now almost in your 10th year as their chief evangelist
Yes.
officer.
So
The question that I have is, how does that, how is your strategy for evangelism and creating kind of a community at Canva different? One, because they're different products, Apple versus Canva, but two, because you're in a different time frame here, right? It's digital
yeah.
versus pre-digital and pre-internet and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I tell you something. So backtrack a little bit. I have to explain what's called Guy's Golden Touch.
Okay.
And Guy's Golden Touch is not whatever I touch turns to gold. Guy's Golden Touch is whatever is gold, Guy touches.
Right.
So I've had two golden moments in my career. I touched Macintosh,
Sure.
increase your creativity and productivity. I touched Canva. It makes anyone into a graphic designer. So what I'm trying to tell you is that evangelizing Macintosh or Canva, the key underlying principle is it's very easy to evangelize good stuff. It's very hard to evangelize crap.
Sure. Yes,
Believe
absolutely.
me, I've tried both. Okay. So now with Canva, they're significantly easier to evangelize Canva because at the very beginning, and you can stay in this status for a long time, if not ever, it's free, right? I had to get people with Macintosh, I had to get people to buy a $7,000 Lisa to program for a $2,500 Macintosh. With Canva, I just say, go to canva.com and put in your name and a password, and you're good to go.
Right.
And so that that barrier is gone. It's much easier, and Canva is available on all these platforms. So it, there's a lot of things that make Canva easier to evangelize than
Sure.
Macintosh. I hope nobody from Canva is listening to this, because it's going to, it's going to denigrate the great work I did. But now with Canva and also with Macintosh, I think that the most powerful thing you can do is a demo.
Yes.
And the demo shows how it has such great results. How does it make you more creative or productive? How does it make you a designer? So, if I were demoing Canva today, I would just say, okay, let's pretend you work for a business and you need to make a presentation. You go to this 16 by 9 template collection, you click on one of them that you like, you change the text, you export. I can build a presentation in 5 minutes. After that, you don't really need to do a lot of selling.
Yeah, that's true though, right? Yeah, that's absolutely true. But it must make kind of getting other people, other customers, because I know you started as a customer for them, other customers, other people who are excited about Canva, influencers, everybody must want to talk about Canva because it solves such a crucial product, problem with their product, right? So that's easier across the board. But if that's the case,
Well,
then go ahead.
no, like I said, guy's golden touch. Whatever's
Yeah.
gold, guy touches.
That's right. Hey, it's a good strategy. It's a good investment strategy as well. But I think the other thing too is, at that time when Canva was had reached out to you, they were also, they were still pretty small. And one of the big things for them was international growth, right? Being an Australian-based company. And so I would assume that you had something to do with helping them expand outside of their local market.
Well, I mean, let me tell you something. Let's say that Canva never hired me.
Sure.
Okay. I still think it would be successful because Canva, it's so obvious why it's so good.
Yes.
You don't even need Guy Kawasaki. Now, this is 10 years ago. So yes, them saying, oh, we got Guy Kawasaki to join our team. That gave them credibility in the fundraising world. It gave them credibility with, many Macintosh owners because of my name. So I'm not saying I was negative or neutral. I had a positive effect.
Sure.
But I think it still would have been successful.
Yeah, and I agree, but I think you actually wisely said a few years ago, you said the endorsements from influencers are like rocket fuel for the mothership. I think in this situation, you were some rocket fuel, right?
I would, to use a car analogy, there's these street racers, and whenever you watch these movies about street racers, and there's always this scene where they're drag racing and somebody presses a button and the nitrous oxide just juices the car. The car was already good and fast. The nitrous oxide just gives it a little burst. Think of me as nitrous oxide.
Yes, absolutely. But I think in any business, whether or not they are just getting started or have started to really pick up some momentum, any business wants to do something faster, right? And I think that having a well-respected, trusted voice like Guy Kawasaki is going to help. Having endorsements from digital or analog influencers is going to help. The idea is to expedite whatever you're already doing, right? We want to get from point A to point B faster.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, let's first, this is getting almost repetitive, but this only works if you have something great.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? If you have mediocre shit, it ain't going to help, right? So there's no influencer in the world who can make something that's shit work.
Exactly.
Well, maybe I take that back. There probably is. But
not many.
Yeah, not many. So now I think the key is that you start with something that's great, and then you just try to increase its exposure and credibility with people that make sense. Now, I made sense for Canva, but it's not like Estee Lauder is contacting me to help them with their new lipstick, right?
Yes.
And so, you got to go get Kim Kardashian or Taylor Swift for that. Although I bet Taylor Swift would make people use Canva too, but
Yes.
I am
I'm
not
sure.
Taylor Swift. So it has to like make sense.
That's right.
I'll give you an example that I think makes no sense.
Okay.
So when I see these ads, Matthew McConaughey waxing poetically about how much he loves his Lincoln Navigator or Lincoln SUV.
Yes.
I mean, you're trying to tell me that Matthew McConaughey drives a Lincoln? I kind of doubt that, right?
Yes.
So that it has to make sense at a very simple level. And so what people should do, your B2B listeners, okay, let's take it as a given they have a great product. And then, yes, you would like to get these reference accounts and you would like to get these famous influencers. But I truly believe that you need an open mind to embrace evangelism. And this means that there are going to be people who rise up out of your install base that you never heard of, that are not famous, don't have 25 million followers. And they're going to just love your product. And they're going to be your unpaid evangelist, salesperson, marketer, and spokesperson. So when this happens, lots of companies freak out like, oh my God, why are these people helping us? And that's the wrong attitude.
Okay.
You should say, thank you, God, that people love our product and are willing to spread the word. How can we help them? And many companies don't take that attitude. They're like so into control that they're worried that what if these people misrepresent our products or something.
Right.
So don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I think in tech, maybe the most powerful two people are iJustine and Marques Brownlee, right?
Yes.
So if I had a product and Marques Brownlee said, buy this product, it's kind of game over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that in a positive way.
Yes, exactly.
But what's the probability of you getting to iJustine or Marques, and then they love your product and they're willing to talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking, 1 out of 1,000, right?
Exactly.
So don't get me wrong. If Marques says, yes, I want to talk about your product, frick, get on the ground.
Do what Apple did. And Apple brought them to their launch, right? Of I think it was the latest iPhone or whatever it was. They brought him to a launch. iJustine was there. There's, a picture of iJustine with Tim and like all this sort of stuff. So they figured that out, right? They're leaning into it. And I think that's right. And I even know in your book, Think Remarkable, you talk about how, certain people maybe have new use cases for your product and don't shy away from that, right? Like, wasn't it duct tape, you said, that was originally created to like waterproof ammo cases?
Yeah.
If I'm getting that right? Like, who would ever think about that? But we see that all the time on social media where, use this blender to make Oreo ice cream. Here's how you do it. And it's like a 10-step process, but lean into it, because why would you not lean into it if people want the Oreo milkshake? Show them how to make the Oreo milkshake, right? This does sort of take me, we've kind of already gone down this path, but thinking about, evangelism as an analog effort versus a digital effort. And it's like, I know that you've said before that it's primarily an analog effort. You may use digital to get it started, but it is
I never said that. I said before it was analog. I think now it's digital.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask you is, do you think, like, what do you think the mix is, or, how does this work in today's world? Because we are so digital, but I think that in a way you have to lean into digital. There's no question. But in a way, doesn't that put more influence and more power in the analog effort if you can attain it?
Well, yes. I mean, but ultimately, using a product, except for software,
sure,
is an analog experience, right? So if you can use all the digital methods you like to get people to use vinegar, but at the end of the day, it's a very analog thing. You're pouring vinegar into your rice, or you're pouring vinegar into a bowl in your dishwasher. That's not digital.
Right.
So at the end of the day, your analog experience better be good.
I see. Okay,
Results are
that makes a
analog,
lot of
well,
sense. Hmm. Yes. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I know even in your book, Think Remarkable, one of the things that I took away from the numerous stories of remarkable people that you highlight is when I look at, Julia Child, who I love that example, and Jane Goodall, as I was reading the stories about their sort of growth mindsets and them not, being unstoppable, Jane Goodall, it was an analog effort to go out and study chimpanzees. But how did she
yes,
take this information to the scientific community, to the public? It was done through distribution ways that, were not digital, but it was done through, scientific research. And, she's doing
right.
interviews and she's doing a lot of different things. So the medium with which you scale your evangelism perhaps is irrelevant. And but it ultimately comes down to what you've done in an analog world. Does that
Yes.
seem right?
I mean, I think that one should not spend too much time trying to distinguish analog and digital,
Okay.
right? It's just
Yeah.
you've got to get to people. And it may be a MailChimp, it may be Salesforce, it may be a Facebook community group, it might be LinkedIn newsletters. All of
Sure.
those things are digital. But it also may be standing in your booth at CES, right? I mean, when you watch all the coverage of CES, it's Marquez Brownlee with the new RN magical
Mm-hmm.
box, and it's
Mm-hmm.
iJustine with the new robot, right?
Yeah.
Now you may be watching videos that come across to you digitally, but it was iJustine in Las Vegas watching this robot mop and vacuum a room.
Right.
And vacuuming and mopping a room is an analog activity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely true. And that was sort of along the lines of my next question for you was like, you know, what's the role of influencers? I would look at iJustine as an influencer, right? She started a channel on YouTube, she grew, she exploded. She's been a professional influencer for her whole professional career almost, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about brands who want to set up an evangelism program and however they embody that, you know, I think influencers would be a very helpful part of distributing your message and spreading the good news. Um, would you agree?
I would agree with some caveats.
Okay.
And the caveats are, like I said before, the influencer has to make sense
Mhm.
for the
Yes.
product category, right? So, I mean, it's not clear to me that iJustine could influence the decision of Caterpillar tractors.
Right.
Although maybe, but I mean, it's just, yeah, you would rather have Mike Roll talking about the Caterpillar tractor than iJustine.
Hmm. Exactly.
So it has to make sense. I also listen. Some people say that I am an influencer because I have millions of followers. Of
Yes.
course, probably 99% of them are either Russian bots or dead. But anyway, but at the top level, it appears that guy is an influencer. Let's say
Hmm.
I have, I don't know, 7 million followers on
Sure.
all media, right?
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but I wish I could say, buy my book. It comes out on March 6th to 7 million people. And let's just be conservative. Oh my God, guy is such an influencer. He tells that to 7 million people. Next day, 700,000 go buy his book. Let me tell you something. I'd be lucky if I got 700 to buy
Sure.
the book. I'd be extremely ecstatic, doing backflips, drinking vinegar if I got 7,000 to buy my book. Now,
Yeah.
it could just be that I'm not Kim Kardashian, Taylor Swift, Marquez Brownlee, or iJustine. I understand that. But on the surface, you would think, "Boy, I can surely move the needle with 7 million followers." It's not that easy. And,
Mm-mm.
maybe I should retain your firm because I must be
Yes.
doing something wrong. But it's not that. I mean, if you tell me you can guarantee you'll sell 700,000 copies of my book, I will retain you right now.
Of
Right
course.
now.
Yes, yes.
Send me the DocuSign.
Exactly. I'll just send it right now. Yeah, no, and I think that's right though, and that's the power of influence, and that's a lot of what we're seeing in the market today is people think, oh, if I can just get so and so to promote my product, it will, it'll take over. They're gonna 5x my return. And the reality is, you have to have a marketing strategy no matter what. Yes, influence is there. Influence is powerful, and influencers do sell products. But to your point, the fit has to be correct, and you have to have it as part of a marketing strategy. Influencers
Right.
aren't your only strategy; they are a megaphone, or rocket fuel, per your
Well,
quote
and
earlier.
I think that people, they need to understand that there is there are differences between influencers and evangelists.
Yes.
Like an influencer, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they believe in some of the stuff they evangelize, but they are basically hired guns,
Yes.
right? And so, like, as I say, Matthew McConaughey didn't fall in love with Lincoln and contacted Ford and said, please, I wanna evangelize Lincoln because I love it so much. I would be astounded if that's how that happened.
Yes, me too.
On the other hand, there may be Joe Blow and Jane Blow who you never heard of, and they have 500 followers, but they love what you do. Arguably, I would rather have a bunch of people with 500 followers who really are your users and love what you do and use it and understand it than one, top of the line
Hmm.
hired gun. Um, at least that would be my.
Yeah.
I would love to have about 1,000 podcasters who have only 200 downloads who love my book.
Yes.
Now, don't get me wrong. If Marques Brownlee went on and said, you all need to read Think Remarkable, I would get on my knees and thank God. But over the long run, I think it's much more likely that one high school teacher loves the book, uses it for his or her class. That spreads to another teacher. That spreads to parents. Parents tell their friends, oh, I found this book called Think Remarkable. It really helped my kid get his or her direction. You should buy it
Hmm.
for your kids too. I think at the end of the day, that's more powerful. Now you need more of them.
Hmm.
So Marquez, if you're listening to this, please endorse my book. But any of you other parents, I want you to read my book too.
Yes. Well, I think you should. I know you dedicated the book to Gen Z. I believe the line was
Yes.
to Gen Z. Your time has come. Um,
Well, I'll tell you a great story.
okay.
So, as I was writing this book, I read an article in Wired magazine about a woman in Rogue River, Oregon. She's a high school teacher, and her name is Kelly Gibson. And she was in this Wired magazine article about how she's using AI in a high school classroom in Rogue River, Oregon, population 2,500.
Hmm.
So it's not like she's a influencer. She's not
Sure.
the Marques Brownlee of education,
Right.
right? I don't even know how Wired found her, but I found her through Wired, and I interviewed her for my podcast, and we became friends. And I gave her the draft of Think Remarkable, and she said, Guy, I read Think Remarkable. The examples you use, Jane Goodall, Julia Child, Christy Yamaguchi, Margaret Atwood, you
Hmm.
know, Carol Dweck. I hate to tell you, Guy, but my high school students, they don't know who they are. And I'm like, my jaw's dropping. I'm saying, you're telling me that some people don't know who Jane Goodall are? And then I surf with somebody, and she's a friend of mine, and somebody was asking her who I was. And so she said, oh, yeah, he's Guy Kawasaki. He has a podcast called Remarkable People. He has people like Jane Goodall on his show.
Hmm.
And she said, you know who Jane Goodall is, right? And they said, we kind of know. We're not too sure that it is.
Oh wow.
So anyway, this is a valuable lesson. So I heard this. I said, holy crap. Like, I'm using all these examples as if I tell you it's like Julia Child and you immediately know who it is. I tell you it's like Julia Child and you're saying, who's Julia Child? That's a problem. So I said, okay, so for Gen Z, who is their hero? Who is the person that they look up to? And she said, Olivia Juliana. My next question was, who's Olivia Juliana? Because I'm 69. I don't know who Olivia Juliana is. And she said, Olivia Juliana is the activist in Texas who Matt Gaetz, the congressman from Florida, made a speech and said something to the effect that, only fat, ugly women care about abortion rights. And I don't know why, because nobody wants to have sex with them. So what do they need abortion rights for? Which is so offensive. I cannot even imagine that. But anyway, so when he said that, he basically said, okay, so the people who are fighting for abortion rights, they're like 5 feet and 200 pounds. And so Olivia kind of tweeted back to him, listen, I'm 6'2" in heels and I wear heels so that I can look down on small men like you. And so you know your place in the world. So then he countered and, attacked her. And she took this whole attack and she used it to raise $2.5 million to support abortion rights. And I didn't know any of this until my high school teacher friend in Rogue River, Oregon, told me the name Olivia Juliana. That's why Olivia Juliana is in the book.
That makes sense. I was wondering about that, so that makes sense.
Did you know who Olivia Juliana was?
So I did. I knew who she was, but I didn't know. I guess she kind of stuck out a little bit to me as I was reading through, because I think the book starts as she's one of the first stories that you talk about, right? Yeah. And to me, I thought, I wonder what the direction the book is going to take. And then once I realized, I was like, oh no, this makes a lot of sense. And you also reference, hey, this isn't TED Talk. This is this is TikTok, not TED Talk. Right. And so it all sort of made sense, but I didn't know the backstory, I guess, of how you found out about this. Okay.
I'll tell you another similar story. So now Guy is on a hunt for people that Gen Z recognizes.
Yes.
Okay. Because I am going to write a book that's relevant to Gen Z if it kills me.
Right.
So now I got Olivia Juliana. And I'm an investor in a company called Merge4. They make socks. And this Merge4 CEO was flying one day back from Las Vegas. And she sat next to Mark Rober. And she said, you ought to interview this guy for your podcast. Okay. And just like with Olivia Juliana, my response was, who is Mark Rober? So now I got to do research. So Mark Rober, in case you're older than Gen Z, he is the guy who made the exploding shipping boxes with glitter and fart gas. And he also did the Squirrel Olympics. And he made a Nerf gun that is like 6 feet long. He also made a Nerf gun that you can only see with a microscope, like at the DNA level.
He's a very interesting guy. YouTube master.
And, the basic 25 million followers on YouTube. He's like in the same league as Mr. Beast, right? So I reach out to him, I interview him, and I tell my kid who's like 19 years old, you know who Mark Rober is?
She knew.
He says, oh yeah, the guy at the Squirrel Olympics and the exploding box. I know all about him, the Nerf gun. And then he did this and he did this with bed bugs and all this. And his exploding boxes and, his like trapping people who are breaking into cars. Then all my classmates know him too. Well, holy shit. If I had said to him, you know who Julia Child is?
Yeah. Then maybe they wouldn't, right?
So that's why if you're Gen Z or you're a parent of a Gen Z and you're listening to this, my book is full of people that everybody will recognize.
Exactly. And some that you may not recognize, but you should know, right? Because I think that's sort of the theme, is that you can be remarkable at any age, at any stage in life. And, just because you're not known to one segment of the population doesn't mean you're not remarkable to another.
Well,
right?
if nothing else, to you parents out there, after you read my book, you can go to your Gen Z teenager and say, huh, what's Olivia Juliana up to? And have you seen the latest Mark Rober video? And your kids will be blown away.
There you go. There you go. It's a good connection point for your kids. So the question for me then is, are you going to market your book on TikTok?
Oh, this is a very good question. I don't know the answer to this. Like Madison, co-author, she's 25. She can pull off TikTok, okay? Sure. Although Kelly Gibson, the teacher from Rogue River, she has a lot of followers on TikTok, all educators, okay? Now, I'm 69 and male. It's not clear to me I can pull off TikTok. You tell me. You're the social media expert.
I absolutely think that you can. You have an abundance of content. I mean, just a quick Google search shows how much content you have out there that could easily be repurposed into a TikTok account. If you're going on a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of great podcast content. But more than that, I think if you look at, and I know Martha Stewart's been a guest on your Remarkable podcast, she's incredible at TikTok. Absolutely incredible. So I think the combination of you and Madison and maybe your 19-year-old child could probably get some really good movement happening on TikTok, and you might be able to make some moves.
Not that I want something for free, but I do. So
yeah. Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so now I have a 19-year-old son. I have a 25-year-old co-author. I'm a 69-year-old over-the-hill Asian American. So tell me, like, what am I going to go on TikTok and do? Like a 30-second thing on this is how you acquire a growth mindset and explain in 30 seconds. Yeah. What do I do on TikTok?
Yes, those videos are great. And Gen Z loves good career advice. I think if you look at the different sort of pockets of TikTok, because TikTok's all about pockets, they have tons of career guidance folks that are out there, tons of inspirational leaders and thought leaders that go out and give kind of thought-provoking content. And then you even have accounts like, I think there's one account, I have to find it and send it to you. He is a dad and he goes out and he gives advice to dad, like your dad would give advice to you. So it's really great for someone who maybe their dad doesn't know this stuff, or maybe they don't have a father figure in their life. And he kind of fills that void with like how to change a career.
I can do that.
Yes. So listen, if there is an audience for your content, it will be found on TikTok. And TikTok, the algorithm will help people find you that need this. So I think it's in the cards. And why not, right? I mean, my favorite chapter or segment in your book was about growth mindset. Maybe this is another growth mindset change for Guy Kawasaki, is to get on TikTok. Figure it out, right? I like it.
Okay. One last, trying to get something for nothing.
Yeah, no.
So do I have to shoot TikTok with an iPhone, or can I use something like Ecamm Live or Photo Booth? Can I use like a real desktop app as opposed to
you can upload.
I think it's so hard to create great video with iPhone.
You know what? I'd say do whatever you're the most comfortable with and you feel like represents yourself in the most authentic way. Because TikTok and Gen Z love authenticity, right? So if you're over here not figuring out the iPhone or whatever it is, or if Madison doesn't want to do it for you and use CapCut, then yeah, do whatever you're comfortable with. That's no big deal. But I don't think the aim of TikTok is not to show up as this, or even social media is to show up as this polished person who has everything together and knows all the answers. Right? We're all figuring it out anyway. And things change every day in social media. So no one's really truly an expert for more than 24 hours. Right?
And what? Madison and I should appear together, or should Madison create her own account?
Well, what's really interesting is I had on the podcast, I had a woman, her name is Santina, and there is a TikTok account. It's at the real Dr. Miami. And he is a plastic surgeon in Miami. And he does really hilarious content. That's, he's not showing surgeries, right? I think that's actually illegal. But he hired her as his social media manager, and she now appears in content with him His whole office is on the TikTok channel. It's very popular, and they've kind of created these characters effectively that they all play out. So, that's one way to do it. And if you don't want to be in the content by yourself, heck yes, get Madison, get your kids, get your family, get anybody. And also, you've got a long-standing, incredible podcast, Remarkable People. You've got some great clips, audio, that you could throw in on top of some interesting sort of B-roll. So there's a lot that can be done. I think the trouble for most people is, do I have the content and the confidence? You have the content, you just need to gain the confidence.
Can I ask you, my last dumb question?
Please.
Is this something that your firm does?
Yeah. So we do, we do influencer marketing mainly, but we do help people with a little bit of social strategy and stuff. So, yeah, if you want some help, we can totally help you.
Can I hire you just to help me do TikTok?
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. I think, I think Madison and the social standard could get it done on TikTok. I think we probably could.
Okay. I'll reach out to you after this ends.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We're gonna get Guy Kawasaki viral on TikTok. I like the way this. I like the way this looks. So,
well, I mean, if you can get Guy Kawasaki viral on TikTok, I would say that. Well, first, I will be your biggest evangelist.
I love it.
Number one.
Okay. Yep.
And number two, I mean, it would be such a great story. You take someone who made his bones in the personal computer revolution, and then he grew with the growth mindset into the internet revolution. Mm-hmm. And then he continued to grow into the social media revolution. And now Jess and her crew brought him into TikTok.
Yep.
That'd be a great story.
We're bringing it into 2024, and we're doing some stuff on TikTok. It could be a story of the ages. I think, yeah. And look, we're in the digital world. We're in the world of personal branding, and authors. In this vein, you're an author, right? And so authors have varying degrees of success on social media. But you look at, I'll give an example is, Adam Grant. He's huge. Yeah. Right. And he does all the same things you do. And he's on social media in a big way. So, but his audience.
Adam Grant has TikTok?
I know he has Instagram, and he's very big on Instagram. I'm not sure. I'd have to look in and see if he has TikTok or not. But, the reality is you create short form video and you put it on YouTube Shorts, you put it on Instagram, you put it on TikTok. The reason that I bring up TikTok specifically for you is because you've just dedicated a book to Gen Z. And if we want Gen Z to read it, we better show up where they are.
Oh, more work. Okay.
I know it's never ending. It's never ending. But, I talked to a very popular author, or rather my CRO talked to a very popular author who said, back in the day, he was an original top voice on LinkedIn, and it was very hard to post because, it just takes up a lot of time, as you know. And he said he couldn't not post because every time he posted, he sold $10,000 worth of books. So maybe we need to dig into what he's doing and apply that to the Think Remarkable marketing strategy. There's another one for you.
Well, can I just say that?
Yeah.
Well, we'll take this discussion offline so that
sure.
people.
Hey, it's a live consulting strategy. Why not?
we don't want to show people too much about how the sausage is made.
That's right. We do need to keep some secrets for ourselves. That's true.
but I mean, I think in my case, you have something that, you probably won't disagree with me, even if you did disagree, but you won't disagree publicly. But the book, the content is there. You're not putting lipstick on a pig, right? No. So the book is very good. It's the best book I've written. Yeah. And so you're starting with something that's gold, mm-hmm. and you have an author who is open to whatever, and you also have an author who loves to work hard. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not like your client is a Fortune 500 CEO and his book was ghostwritten. Right. And, you can get half an hour with him or her once a week because he's so busy running a 200,000 employee company.
Right.
This is me and Madison. We're ready to rock and roll.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And that's how a lot of successful authors figure out social media, is because they do. They're ready. They're ready to go. And it's, in my opinion, between social media and speaking gigs, those are the two. That's the rocket fuel for authors these days. You don't have any trouble in the speaking department that I know.
No.
If anything, you may be over indexing there, right? But I think, you do a lot of that stuff. So it sounds like we need to get you spun up on social media, test that out and see how it runs.
You can scream it from the rooftops. We brought Guy to TikTok.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? And that's a big deal, right? That's absolutely a big deal, especially as we, continue to grow and amplify our B2B influencer division, because we do B2B and B2C, but it's the B2B that I am really excited about. So
the subtle message is, if we can get Guy to TikTok, imagine what we can do for you.
Yes, exactly. But that's true. And it's the era of personal branding. So I'm all in. We'll have to figure that one out.
Okay.
But yeah, well, I mean, Guy, this was an incredible conversation. I really enjoyed listening to the ins and outs of evangelism. I think I mentioned this a bunch too, but I really enjoyed your book, Think Remarkable. And you said it's out on March 6th. So grab a copy of it. And then you got to follow up in a month or two, and let's see if Guy's on TikTok.
Well, I mean, we don't want to turn this into a Think Remarkable promotion podcast, but just give me 30 seconds. So basically, Think Remarkable explains 9 paths with 88 different methods on how to improve your life and make a difference. And it reflects interviewing about 200 remarkable people, many of whom you will not have heard of because you're too young. But there's Olivia Juliana and Mark Rober in it.
That's right.
And this book is not the Guy way. It's not about Guy talking about how I'm so perfect and right, and these are my proven methods. This reflects a synthesis of 200 remarkable people layered upon my 4 decades of experience. So this is a book that's tactical and practical. It's not an ego memoir. This is like the 4 agreements on steroids brought up to 2024, not based on 12,000-year-old Mayan religion. Okay?
It sounds interesting, but that's not this. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you so much.
I love it. Yeah, it was great to talk to you, Guy. I look forward to seeing you on TikTok, and hopefully we can continue the conversation. This was great. Thank you.
I promise you, we are going to continue this conversation. You won't be able to get rid of me.
That sounds great. I'm all in.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.